Hello, everybody. Hello, Mr. Keith. Jill, hello. Nice to meet you, see you. And Nikki, we see a picture. We don't see you, but that's fine. Jeremy, are you there?
I am.
Hey, Dave.
We're excited to take you guys further this today. So Keith was not able to join us last week, but he's here today. And John, how many do you show that we have right now?
Looks like we have 5 right now.
Okay. Hey, Jeremy, so I'm locking your name because we had to learn German living in Austria.
Yeah.
Tell me how you pronounce it in the US.
How to pronounce it in the US?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the American version is just Jungbauer.
Jungbauer, okay. Yeah. And what's your family heritage?
So they grew up, my great-grandparents were on the German-Czech border, but they actually spoke Czechoslovakian. And so when they migrated over here, they migrated to Shiner, Texas, where there's a lot of German, Czech immigration. And so they had a farm there, and that's where my grandparents grew up, and they eventually moved to San Antonio.
Wow. So do you know how a German would pronounce your last name?
Jungbauer?
Jungbauer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love all things German now. So
No, that's
language.
That's good. Yeah, I need to get over there across the pond once it's safer to.
Well, Martin that joined us last week, I just met him online last week with you guys, but he's from the Czech Republic.
Well, there we go.
Well, I think we have a few more, but since it's 2, we're going to go ahead and get started. For those of you who this is the first time you're joining us, welcome. If you signed up for anything other than an online mentoring workshop, you're in the wrong place. But if that's what you signed up for, you're in the right place, and we want to welcome you. I'm Christina Elledge. My husband Chris and I, we founded and organized Fahrenheit Real Life Mentoring, and John, who let you in the waiting room, works with us, and he's the brains of this operation. So we did have one question about, I sent out a link to last week's recording, and it was switched to a private setting. We changed that to a public setting. So next week's and this week will be available to you, and we'll send that out to you so you can get caught up. Keith, you're behind, so no shame or guilt, but just saying. Anyway, what we'd like to do is just open up real quickly and tell us who you are, tell us where you're located, and tell us who you work with, work for, what you do. And if you can't talk about it, we won't ask questions. We'll just assume you're with the CIA. So Matt, because I know Matt Peacock, boy, the stories I could tell about Matt Peacock. We're gonna have you start, and you can introduce yourself real quick. And I do have a buzzer, so if you go over 32 seconds, I'll buzz.
I'm in Austin, Texas. We're waiting for some rain today. It hasn't happened yet, but hopefully. And been here for third time back, been here 20-something years now, and work for a nonprofit called Partners in Hope. And I'm the service director of that, and we're hoping to be able to add mentoring to part of what we do real soon.
Matt, can you talk about what Partners of Hope does in a nutshell?
We come alongside families on a long-term basis, and we try to help people in isolation get connected to community. We do that by providing living condition help. It helps us kind of establish a relationship with them, and then we try to build relationships from the community into their life and help them get connected to a local church and to Christ is kind of our end goal.
Great. Thanks for sharing. Somebody else want to introduce yourself, where you live, who you work for, who you work with?
I'll go. My name is Jeremy Youngbauer, live in Austin, Texas. Matt Peacock and I actually go to the same church and the same men's Bible study. And he invited me along to help with some mentorships later on down the road through his organization. What I do, I actually work for a company called Stallion Capital Management. We are a private debt fund where we have investors invest with us, and then we lend those monies out on different real estate projects around Texas.
That's why he's not showing his video, because if he shows up at your door because you owe him money, he doesn't want you to recognize him. So
Yeah, that's the case. That's the case.
I shared your secret, Jeremy. Sorry about that.
It's out of the bag.
Okay, someone else.
I'm Denise Ray. I'm also in Austin, Texas. I have the privilege of working with Matt Peacock as the Community Outreach Coordinator for Partners in Hope. So my job is kind of the ongoing connection that we have with our families over the course of a year, helping them to get connected to resources and individuals in the community, helping them get connected to churches and different programs that are available through the churches, and helping them to sort of establish goals for what's next for them and how we can support them through their journey.
Great. Nice to have you, Denise. Next.
I guess I'll go. I'm Keith Thomas, and I'm the president of Gulf South Men, which is a men's ministry. Our ministry focuses primarily on challenging older men to be disciple makers and to invest in the lives of younger men. And I recently turned 65, so I think I qualify. Now, see, you're supposed to gasp in amazement and say, no.
All together now. 1, 2, 3.
I live in Oklahoma
Don't believe
City.
it. I don't believe it.
I live in Oklahoma City, but since we have so many Texans on, I was born in Texas, so I almost qualify there. But have been meeting with Chris for over a year now on almost a weekly basis, and learned a lot about life and mentoring and a variety of things. So I'm looking forward to being part of this.
Thanks for joining, Keith. You don't look a day over 64. Okay, someone else.
I'll go. Hi, everybody. I'm John. I live in New Mexico. I used to be in Oklahoma. I'm from Tennessee, if you couldn't tell by the accent. Let me see. I am retired on disability, but I'm finishing seminary school this Friday. Yay!
Yay!
And yeah, I'll be done with school. I'm so glad for that. And but it's my second meeting here. I've known Chris for about 3 years now. I think I was doing an interview with him for mentoring for one of my classes. And yeah, I'm here to learn. As I told Chris, I wondered if it was possible to do mentoring by mail, as the people I'm looking to mentor are in prison. So I'm looking at starting a prison ministry. And so that's what I'm hoping to learn.
Very good. Thanks, John. We know there's a holy aura about you. It's because you're getting ready to finish seminary.
Yeah, I'm in front of a window. So
Okay. Who haven't we heard from? Jill, I'm just going to call you out, girl. Tell us who you are, who you're with.
Sure. I Jill Johnson, and I live in Austin, Texas, with the rest of some of these folks. And I work with Matt and Denise and Dee at Partners in Hope. And I do some communications and development consulting for them. And I missed last week, but looking forward to catching up this week.
We're glad you're here. You have a great name to start like a clothing line.
Oh
Jill
my God, it's
Johnson.
so common. Do you know how many Jill Johnsons there are?
Well,
Just
special.
in Austin alone.
Very good. Okay, Dane, you've got that look in your eye like you're just waiting to tell us who you are.
I got to figure out how to use this thing. My name's Dane. I'm in Colorado, and I was here last week, but I was the sick guy hiding. So I
We're glad
apologize.
we're on mute.
What's that?
I said,
Am
we
I
were
still on
glad
mute?
you were on mute while you were being
Oh,
sick.
yeah. Well, this week I'm the coughing sick guy, so I'll be on mute again. But I started a medical missions organization about 9 years ago with Campus Crusade, and we got doing too many risky things with medicine that crew said, we need you to step off staff and do this. So my wife and I started Global Obserion Go Medical Missions, and we've transitioned from being medical missions focused to being discipleship focused. And now we send teams based not solely off of our desire to have medical teams in places, but we also send other kinds of teams, sports teams and construction teams and well digging teams and all that kind of stuff. And so I've been just desiring more depth and range for discipleship and mentoring and that kind of stuff. And that's where connected with Chris. Actually was looking for some software for our organization, and the company said, hey, I asked this company, I said, hey, I don't know if your software is right for me, but I'd like to talk with some of your clients to ask them. And one of the clients was you guys. So I was put in touch with Chris, and it's been a good friendship since then. So
That's great. Nice to have you, Dane. Okay, Nikki, last but not least, tell us who you are, where you're at.
Hi, I'm Nikki, and I'm actually from the UK. So I work for a college and I re-engage people back into education. That's the summary of my role.
Well, for the next 7 minutes, could you just read the phone book and let us listen to your lovely accent?
Well, it's 8 o'clock over here. I missed last week's because I got completely muddled with time. So yeah.
Well, we're glad you're unmuddled today, Nikki.
Thank you.
Christine, let me ask. So, Nikki, how did you know about the workshop?
I found you on Eventbrite. I just put in mentoring and I've just been scouring everything that's on there really. So yeah.
And where in the UK do you live?
So I live in Buckinghamshire. So a little county called Buckinghamshire. So I'm kind of in between Oxford and Cambridge and Birmingham and London.
Okay. The reason I ask, because we have friends in the London area, but I'm actually mentoring a guy from Oklahoma who lives in London. So
yeah, I'm about I don't know how many miles. It's about, I suppose, about an hour away, I guess, on a good day.
Okay. Very good.
Well, welcome. We're so glad you're here. And last but not least, I'm not going to say Diane because I know it's not Diane. Dion. Tell us who you are. We're just doing an introduction. Tell us who you are and where you live and who you work for with.
I'm Dion Ehlers. Most people call me Dee. I work with Partners in Hope, and I'm in Austin, Texas.
Very good. Later on, we're going to talk about the importance of, the reason we did this is we believe God works through people, and sometimes you'll run across somebody who you need to connect them with somebody else. And so we hope that this group here could be possible connections for you in the future. So we're going to jump right in. We're going to do a quick review of what we discussed last time. It's all the information you should have in the PDF guide that you had, but we're going to talk about or just do the highlights by way of review. We're going to jump into a tool to give you something practical to work on. We'll be working on that about 30 minutes. Chris is going to take us through that tool. Then we're going to wrap up and then leave time at the end for questions and answers. But if at any time you have a question, just feel free to ask. And if we have time, we'll jump into it there. And if not, we'll for sure answer that at the end. So we're going to jump right in. one of the first steps in mentoring, by way of a review, we talked about connecting, looking for those connecting points to meet people for potential mentoring relationship. Somebody, by way of memory, or just cheat and look through your notes, tell us about the little diagram. It had mentoring first, it had some arrows. What was another aspect that was on that diagram? Anybody want to answer that? We'd actually, somebody had mentioned it, and then somebody's mentioned it again of, we have it sort of as a series of mentoring, then discipling, then coaching, off to the side, connecting with others, and also counseling. This actually is a Venn diagram where all of these aspects of working with people, there's so much overlap. I'm not sure what page that is on. I have a different guide than you all. Page 5, John saying. So we're going to refer back to that diagram in a little bit. We talked about several aspects of mentoring, the first and foremost being that it was biblical. Just somebody want to jump in? What was another aspect that we talked about mentoring from Fahrenheit perspective? We said it's biblical. What was another aspect of mentoring that we discussed? Wow, you guys are really energetic on this. I'm just blown away at your willingness to answer these questions. Wait, did somebody say one-on-one? You're right. We said mentoring is one-on-one. Somebody else, I know you're dying to answer these questions. What was another aspect of mentoring?
Focuses on the whole person.
Yes, focuses on the whole person. Break that down a little further for us, John. You're talking, so you get to really talk now.
All right, I'm going to cheat here. It's got the spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, relational, professional, educational aspects of the person. So pretty much everything.
Right. If we just meet with somebody and we talk about how they're doing spiritually, boy, I'm so much more than how I'm doing spiritually. You need to know about how I'm doing with a physical ailment or something I'm struggling with mentally. Right. And then the last one, we said it's intentional. Oh yeah, focuses on the heart. That's right. Very good, John. It values the person. We don't want mentoring to be about a project. I'm just going to meet with Jill because I just want to, treat her as a project. No, I want to meet with Jill because I want to see her as a whole person. And then it's intentional if we're going to, especially Austin, Texas people, you're going to be real intentional about these relationships, and you're going to follow up, and you're probably going to be the one who's always lining up a meeting or going by a person's house. That's all part of mentoring. So on page 8, we're going to begin with session 2 about why should we mentor in the first place. There's an article that if somebody would volunteer, I know how this has gone just a few minutes ago, so please don't everybody volunteer at once, but somebody, would you read the mentoring through the power of one-on-one there at page 8?
I'll read.
Thanks.
What Jesus did was handpick a few men to become disciples, men who would walk with him along the journey of life, men who would watch him and learn from him as he went about his day. They would pray with him, eat with him, travel with him, and then sit with him by an open campfire at the end of the day. He lived his life in front of them, and they became like family to him. He allowed them to see firsthand how he handled stress and struggles, how he applied his faith to every circumstance, how he treated people he met along the road. They saw him heal the sick, care for the poor, preach on the mountainsides, and confront the Pharisees and religious zealots. They witnessed how he dealt with the everyday issues of life, work and taxes and finances and difficult people. They walked with him through storms and sunny days, through times of trial and times of joy, moments of suffering and pain and happiness. They even watched him die. And the mentoring process began with 2 simple words: follow me. Jesus didn't bombard his disciples with information or hand them a 300-page syllabus to memorize before morning. He didn't start his journey with a written test or a long form he needed them to fill out. What Jesus asked for was a commitment of time, for the change to sow into their lives and show them who he was and what he believed.
Thanks, Denise. We just think that is such an incredible picture of mentoring. Jim Stump is the author of the book Power of One-on-One. In the back of your guide, we list all kinds of resources. That's one that if you've not checked out the book, it's talks about the intentionality of one-on-one mentoring, and he gives some great personal experiences. And man, it's a great resource. But that excerpt that he gives there really sums up what we believe that mentoring looks like. Another, why do we mentor in the first place? I think there's a myriad, but what we've come to see over years of experiences that people are weary. People are flat worn out. In Matthew 9:35-38, he talks about Jesus went into all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every sickness and every disease. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them because they were weary and scattered. And after years and years of working with people in and outside of the church, it doesn't take long for you to realize a lot of people are weary and scattered. I love the word scattered there. In the Holman Christian Bible, it says worn out. During COVID, I think that is even more in your face and more obvious, the weariness of people. This is not in your guide, and I will email you guys a copy of an article as we deal specifically in this moment in history, the weariness of people. But according to the Center for Disease Control, they indicate that mortality rates during the COVID pandemic are not just limited to the effects of the virus, but suicide and drug overdose surpasses yearly averages, and reports indicate that those numbers are increasingly rising. Mentors they must ask hard questions. To say that we are living through unprecedented times is an understatement. This phrase has been coined about as many times as there has been an article with the theme of COVID being discussed. But mentors, we are living through unprecedented times. Suicide and drug overdose related deaths do not just happen to other people. They can happen to sons, daughters, coworkers, teachers, doctors, and neighbors. How are you stewarding the heart of your mentee during COVID? I'll send you all an article, that article about the weariness of people, especially now. COVID has highlighted that. But by way of a question, what clues do you all notice in your maybe sphere of influences in your communities of the people? What clues do you see of people being weary? Either COVID related or just life related. What are some things that, as you've worked with people in your circles, what are some things that you've noticed that demonstrate weariness in people?
You know, there was I don't know if y'all saw the New York Times article about languishing. Did any of y'all see that article? It's pretty much come up in every conversation I've had lately with friends. And this person was basically describing it, that is now or has been for a while, a psychological term. But it's more and more common now that that's the term people are using, that they're not necessarily depressed or despondent, they're just languishing, not knowing how to move forward, just kind of feeling trapped in a circle. And that's just, that term has come up a lot in my friends and my circles lately as an apt description for how we're feeling right now.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
I have noticed in the public square, it seems people are a lot more angry than they used to be. You know, wear a mask, don't wear a mask. I mean, we went to dinner Mother's Day, and I saw people actually shaking their finger and yelling at people for not doing whatever it is. If you're wearing a mask, they didn't want you to, and so forth. I had never noticed it, certainly to that extreme before.
Mhm.
I think for us, the biggest thing we're seeing is distance. No matter if people are engaging in relationship or whatever, there is this very cautious distance that they're keeping until they trust enough or until they have seen enough to engage in depth and in true relationship. They just keep their arm out and say, "Whoa, hold off. You say you want to love me." You know, we partner disciple with discipler, and even in that, you know, it's been weeks that they've been working with on communicating whatever, and we get on our mission trips and they're like, you can still feel this pressure back, just forever so slight. Sometimes it's 20 minutes and then it's all gone, but for others it's a few days, maybe even a week of our trips. So
Mm.
I think we can
I'll
see it
share.
on people's faces. You can see it in their expressions.
Mhm. What does that look like, Denise, when you see weariness on people's faces?
You know, we used to have the chance to gather in a way, you know, that was kind of a source of joy for people. And when we see them now, it's much more one-on-one. It's not gathering, although we're coming into that. But, you know, instead of seeing somebody come into a group and have a smile on their face and, you know, really be excited, it's really just a more, you know, drawn expression. It almost looks, you know, like the sadness or despondent, you know, kind of a melancholy. That's just not the bright eyes and the upturned corners of the mouth and that kind of stuff. And then the facial expression, the body language follows that. You know, the shoulders are down, the head is down.
Mhm.
You know, the steps are small. That kind of like an expression with our face, with our bodies about what's really going on inside our hearts.
Mhm.
We're slowly coming out of lockdown over here. And Boris Johnson gave his 5 o'clock speech today, and next week on the 17th, we're actually allowed to give hugs to people, which is nice. But so when we first went into lockdown last March, I mean, you know, loads of people were shielding, and yeah, I mean, the whole country, as I say, went into lockdown for 3 months at least. And then we went into a second lockdown, or third lockdown, I suppose, at the beginning of January, of which we're coming out now. And people have found, I think, the third lockdown a lot harder than the first two, because also it was winter time. You know, it was just a depressing, difficult time. What's really interesting now, though, is that people are willing, because we're allowed to go abroad they've put 12 countries on a green list that we're allowed to go to without having to shield or, you know, go into quarantine for 2 weeks. People are just willing to spend extraordinary amounts of money in order to get that 2-week hit. And it's like all their values have kind of just gone completely all over the place. And this sort of they're just desperate, I think, to forget how difficult it was. Whereas sometimes we need to remember how difficult things were, don't we? But that's kind of where we are over here.
I think by your stories that it doesn't take long to really see the weariness of people, and a lot of times is that because they don't have an outlet, they don't have a person who's walking alongside them, they don't have a community. I think it is one of the things about when you are in relationship with a mentee and they share a fear or a struggle, man, is it ever important to follow up on that. I wanted to give you a quick example of that just happened yesterday. It was Mother's Day. at our church, we had a panel of moms sharing their experiences, and everybody was very vulnerable. It wasn't the sweet, there were some hard stories that were shared. And afterwards, one of the audience members, in church audience it is, whatever. Anyway, she had come up to me, somebody that I was very well acquainted with and hadn't seen for a very long time. She's my age. It's not somebody that I'm mentoring, but she came up to me and began to share what has happened in the last 6 months. It's heavy, heavy stuff. And the one thing that she shared with me is, I've carried this by myself, because her fear in sharing the difficulties that she's experiencing, she is not sure how her faith community is going to receive the news of what she's gone through. And so she's carried it by herself. And her sharing it with me was the first time she shared it. And she could hardly get the facts out for crying so much about the pain that she was carrying. And so it would be so unwise and unloving of me. Again, she's not somebody I mentor, but if she were, it would be foolish for me to just say, that's great, I hope that works out for you. That's not what mentoring is. It's going through the difficulties with somebody. It's following up. Now, I do want to refer to that diagram on page 5. Let's say the woman who shared with me was somebody I was mentoring, and she shared this great difficulty. And I won't tell you who she is, but the great difficulty is she has 2 daughters who are struggling with depression to the point of suicide. I am not a licensed professional counselor. And so if we look back to that diagram, where we have mentoring, discipling, coaching, counseling, and connecting with others, if she were my mentee, my first thought is, I can't counsel her through these very difficult things. She probably needs to be in touch with a professional counselor, as well do her daughters. At the same time, I have another friend who has a daughter going through the very similar experiences that her younger daughters are going through. And my first thought was, I need to connect these 2 women. And so in that one interaction as a mentor, I've not only referred her to somebody else, I've connected her with somebody else. And then, of course, ongoing discipling and just walking through life with her through this hard. I am not called to fix everything. A mentor can't fix everything, but I can help carry her burden. And as we go back to last week's, when we talked about the yoke, I can't carry her yoke, but I can walk with her as she's carrying this heaviness, and we can both seek the heart of the Father in that. I just thought that was an incredible, the diagram, that's just a practical example of how that diagram can work. But the importance of following up when people who we know are carrying their weariness or carrying anxiety and fear, it's so important to follow up and not be afraid to go to those places. It may make us uncomfortable. She shared some things that are kind of triggers for me because of the past, but going to those hard places, and if somebody's entrusted something to you, then handle it responsibly. One of the biggest things we've talked about is fear. And Keith, when you mentioned the anger of people, sometimes the flip side of anger is fear. And so no matter what stage of life people are in, there's always going to be something that people are struggling with. And we see fear as years of working with people as sort of a key thing to look at. And so we're going to jump into the impact of fear. That's tool 1. That's in the back of your guide. And Chris, why don't you take us through that?
Sure, guys, that illustration, that tool is on page, I believe it's 20, unless my printout is a little bit different, but it has fear, confidence, and faith and the side of a blue circle. And then it has the 6 elements that we speak into of a person's life. So I'll give you guys a chance to look at that to find that for a moment. And while we're doing that, Martin joined us a few minutes late, had the wrong link, unfortunately. So Martin, we all introduce ourselves again and we tell what we do. Yeah. Who do you work for? What do you do? And yeah, could you give us a sense of that?
Sure. My name is Martin Hasik. I live in Prague, Czech Republic, and I'm just closing a season that was 10 years long with leukemia, and I'm hoping to enter the coaching and mentoring business.
I'm sorry, did you say leukemia?
Yes, correct.
You've gone through leukemia for 10 years?
Yeah, well, it's been a journey that has been that long, but 5 years was kind of like the serious stuff, and 5 years have been recovery.
Wow, that's amazing. How is your health today?
I'm with you on the call.
I am so glad. Guys, it's interesting, and fear is a piece of this. But until conversations happen, you don't have any idea, do we? What people have dealt with, what their journeys have been like, we can look at people so differently and go, I had no idea. So Martin, my respect for you, without even knowing you, we just met online last week, has already gone up. That's something I've not had to deal with. That's amazing. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
When I was thinking about fear last year and making this a tool, you know why I was thinking about fear to begin with? Anyone have an idea? Why would that topic even be on my mind to develop a tool for that?
COVID.
Actually, that's a great answer, but that wasn't it. What's that?
I bet you were afraid.
Never. I'm a man. Men are never afraid, right? Such a lie. No, I was dealing with some fear, and I was thinking about how it impacts me. So one of the things we're going to take some time to do, guys, is that illustration on page 20 there. In just a few minutes, we're going to look at that, and I want you guys to be thinking about ahead of time. How have you seen fear manifest itself, show itself up in your life physically, mentally, emotionally, in all those areas? You know, maybe you choose one, maybe you choose a couple. I'd love to get a discussion started there. But as I was thinking about fear, I thought, I know when I'm dealing with it, but there's been times I wasn't even aware that I was dealing with fear. That may sound silly to you, but I was raised in a very dysfunctional home, alcoholic father, very poverty, a lot of stuff happened. In fact, our oldest daughter is a case manager for a foster care system. In talking with our daughter, she's told me, Dad, if based on guidelines today, you and your siblings would have been put in foster care based on some of the things you went through. And I thought, oh, wow, I never thought it was that extreme, but it was extreme. But you know, when you just live in something, you may not even realize that it's part of your life. It's just what you know. It's the norm. But I can tell you, my life growing up was not normal. So I say that because several years ago, I'm speaking at an uncle of mine had died. I'm speaking at his funeral. I'd been asked to be the main speaker. So I shared, and after the funeral, we're all at my aunt's home, and all these relatives are in the kitchen. And I had only been around these relatives when I was a child, middle school, and teenager at the latest. All that time had passed, and God had changed me so much. So one of my cousins said, Chris, I really appreciated things you said today. In fact, she said, I'd like to talk to you more about that. Then another cousin looked at me and said, Chris, you've totally changed. You're nothing like you were growing up. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, you were kind of a wimpy, she was going to give me compliments. You were kind of a wimpy, quiet, kind of strange kid. Well, thanks for the compliments. I feel so encouraged. And I almost agreed with her. And then I knew God had done so much in my life. And I said, well, I would almost say yes, but I really haven't changed. She says, yes, you have. Now, guys, don't misunderstand me. We do change. But what they saw when I was up there speaking with such confidence and resolve was who I've always been. But you know what it was covered up with? It was covered up with all kinds of fear. I did not realize that. And so I tried to explain to her, no, what you saw today, who I am today, that guy's always been there. It's just been covered up. So let me throw an illustration out to you. You're at your home, it's time to go to bed. And someone says to you, oh, by the way, there's a poisonous snake in your house. Okay? And you have two choices. You don't know where the snake is, but you can search the entire house until you find it, get rid of the snake, and you can go to bed. And let's say your family's in your home as well. You're not the only one there. Or you can go to bed and take your chances, right? By the way, who would do that? I don't know of any sane person who would go to bed being told there's a poisonous snake in your house. It will attack you at some point tonight. But this is what I've come to understand about fear in my own life and in talking with numerous men over the years with mentoring. We can be battled with fear. And yes, sometimes we realize it's fear. Sometimes we're not aware it's fear. If you're not aware that you're being battled by fear, how can you do anything about it? Does that make sense? It's just who we are. That's how my family is. That's our generation. That's our heritage. No, we have to know. So I've been told there's a poison snake in the house. I'm going after it. I'm going to attack it and I will get rid of it so I can sleep well. Okay. So with that said, I want to throw a few things out. Fear is both, a friend mentioned this to me. Some fear is real. Someone just think, if you have an idea, what would be a real fear a person could have? There's real and there's imagined fear. Okay, so let's talk about real fear for a moment. What would be one?
There's a real fear of getting COVID and dying.
Very good. Okay. Another real fear?
A fear of being,
Sorry,
go ahead, Martin.
just losing a job.
Okay.
Being alone.
Being alone. Okay. Okay, you see those as real fears. Now, let's take the last two that were mentioned. Okay. Well, let's take all three of them. They're real, but they also could be imagined. Okay, we're told COVID comes about and I'm not around anyone with COVID, right? And I'm securing at home, but could I still have a fear that I could get COVID and die? I could. That's how my brain may think. Now, if I'm hanging out with a guy and he has COVID, my fear that was imagined, what could happen, became very real, right? Okay, Martin, you said lose a job, is that right? So is that a real or is that an imagined fear?
Are you asking like if it's my situation, then it's imaginary, but I can see how being in a corporate world, losing a job could be a monthly deal.
A lot of pressure there, okay? What was the third one we mentioned?
Being alone.
Being alone.
I think Denise said being alone.
Okay, Denise, how would you say that's a real fear when you were thinking about it, or an imagined fear?
I consider it to be a real fear.
Okay.
A lot of the folks that we deal with, you know, are people who are isolated. They're not connected to folks in the community. They don't have great relationships with family, or they don't have family present at all.
Okay, see, that's a whole other perspective I was not thinking about, Denise. So quickly, give us a snippet again about what you guys do so everyone understands the context here.
We work with families and individuals who are isolated or at risk for isolation. So they may not, some of them are, maybe it's you know, a widow who physically lives by herself alone, and you know, at one time she was very connected to people in the community, and then her kids grew up and moved away, and now she's in her home by herself and she's not able to drive. So she's not getting out and going into the community. She's not going to church. She's not part of, you know, an interaction outside of what's happening in her home. And so she has sort of moved from this place of being connected and knowing people around her and interacting with people to now she spends her days by herself. And
Right.
maybe there's TV and maybe there's a dog or a cat, but she's by herself. And
That's a real fear. She is alone, right? And maybe she thinks it could even get worse. What could be an imagined fear of being alone? How could that come about? How could that be something in someone's mind? An example.
Well, I can think about the way that especially past trauma can make you feel. You sort of carry these things on with you in your life. And I think about Christina's case, having lost her mom at a very young age and feeling like, okay, there's this front and center, like this could happen, it might happen, right? And you just always have this concern about the loss that might come and it's true and it's logical, and at the same time it sort of can take over the logical, reasonable thoughts of, okay, we're here and we're in good health, and yes, the Lord has given us today and he's given us now and he's not promised us tomorrow. And at the same time, how do we live into today instead of being fearful about what might happen?
Denise, would you like to teach on this session? That's incredible. You just took so many thoughts out of my head, off the paper. We're going to talk about, I think next week is the third week, but we're going to teach you guys a tool, My Life, My Story. And part of, when you mentioned loss, I grew up with this fear of loss because everything was taken. It was always a negative. And so left to myself, I will live in an imagined fear of loss. Well, oh, Keith, you're my friend right now. Keith may get upset and walk away. Okay. Or I have this job. Something could change. I could lose my job. It's numerous things. So it's fair to realize or to understand fear. Sometimes it's a real fear that we need to address. Sometimes it's an imagined fear. Okay, which is more important? If you're mentoring someone and they have the courage to actually be honest with you and say, this is a fear I have. By the way, that's a real gift to be given. When someone will share with you something they're fearful about, they're giving you a piece of who they are. They're letting you come inside a little bit. And I never take that for granted. So what would you say? Which is more important to listen to, the real fear or the imagined fear?
Chris, I got to say, I'm really struggling differentiating between the two.
Okay.
Especially, share my situation. I mean, I joked earlier about my age, but as you age, that fear of being alone is very real and it impacts the decisions that you make.
Yes.
Unless my driving really is as bad as Judy says it is, it's unlikely we'll both pass at the same time. And, not too long ago, I was offered an opportunity at a ministry that we would have to move out of state to do. One of the reasons we didn't was because, what if something happens to one of us? We have no family there.
Okay.
I'm struggling. I don't know if you would call that a real fear or an imaginary. As far as I know, we're both healthy and and all of that kind of thing, but it's a reality you got to deal with.
Okay, Keith, that's a legitimate statement to make. So can an imagined fear become a real fear? Yes, it can. Let me give you examples I have down here. A real fear. I am afraid of my abusive alcoholic father. That's a real fear. Okay. Someone's in a family and there's a father who's an alcoholic, he's abusive, and that's my own example from growing up. So the fear is I'm afraid of my father, okay, that I will get hurt, I'll get abused. That's a real fear, okay? An imagined fear, I'm afraid I will lose my savings, okay? Could we lose our savings? Could that be a reality? It could, but I can promise you, I have done this before. I have worried, I've feared things that there's no reason to fear at that point, but I feared it anyway. Does that make sense?
Chris, can I weigh in on this just a little bit?
Yes, please.
My personal experience with fear, real fear is in the here and now. It's
Okay.
what we're dealing with in actualities, not just how we feel. But imagined fear, even though it's very real, is not based on fact. It's based on projection of fact or fortune telling, future telling. It's based on an outcome that has not yet transpired. So if when I had COVID, I was afraid I might die. And that is a very real fear.
Okay.
Then I didn't have COVID and I was afraid I would get it again and die. That is an imagined fear, although it's still real, it's not a factual thing that was happening at the time. And that's how I differentiate between what the fear that is real and needs to be, can and will be dealt with, and one that I have made up that is a possibility in the future.
Okay.
Keith, does that help a little bit?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Guys, we could go. By the way, thank you for that explanation. That makes so much sense to me. We can also drive ourselves crazy, right? I can drive myself crazy with imagined fear. What could happen? What might happen? Has this ever happened to anyone besides me? Someone tells me, "Oh, Joe, he had a heart attack. He's your same age, Chris, and he had a heart attack and died just like that." My brain has done this before. Oh, wow, Joe was in better shape than me. Joe seemed like a happy guy. Wow, that could happen to me. And my brain could go that direction. That's just an example. That's an imagined fear. I may be very healthy, but the enemy can sure mess with me by giving me an imagined fear.
And
Yeah.
I think it's important. What we're not saying is that, well, if you have an imagined fear, that's a negative. No, we all have imagined fears. But when that controls you, like, okay, well, my cousin had a heart attack at 52. I'm 52. Therefore, I'm going to be so consumed with doing everything to prevent having a heart attack that I don't even enjoy my life. Or I may get hit by a car. Therefore, I'm not even going to drive, because if I drive, I could be hit by a car. When that imagined fear then begins to control and suffocate any sort of life. So an imagined fear is not a negative, but when that drives the car, it's the driving force in our actions, then that's why it's important to talk about it.
Good point. And let me go back to the snake illustration. Unless you know there's a poison snake in the house, you can't even defend yourself. You can't do anything about it. You'll just go, that's just how it is. Guys, I'm convinced that many people live their lives not realizing that they are covered up with fear. It's just what they know. It's what they've been handed, and they bought into it. So based on what Christina just said, as a mentor, someone comes to you and says, okay, you've started this mentoring relationship. Let's get practical here. And you're getting to know them. And again, if I were to meet you for the first time and we sit down and we agreed to have this mentoring relationship, do you think I should ask you about your fears the first time we meet? Dane, you're a man. I bet you've got fears. Tell me some of your fears. That's awkward. We're not going to do that, hopefully. But as you begin this relationship and develop conversations, and you're transparent yourself, in fact, one of the best things a mentor can do is to put themselves out there and say, for instance, with COVID coming about, it's changed our world so much. It's made me think about some things. In fact, I've realized I've dealt with some fears because of this. And what you're doing, you're opening up the potential door for that person to go, wow, me too. I'm fearing this too. It's interesting, as humans, many times we don't want to be the first one to wave the flag and say, hey, I have this fear. Anybody else have this fear? But it's so refreshing when someone will do that. Hopefully it's me as the leader, as a mentor, to go, fear is real. So you're mentoring this person, and there's you're at a certain level of trust where you can talk about fear. And they begin to talk to you about a fear. And you can assess how, as they talk to you about it, is it imagined fear or is it a real fear? Which is more important to talk about?
Perception is reality.
It is.
Whether my fear is real or whether it's imagined in your judgment, it's real to me. And I guess whether it's real or imagined in reality, it's real to me and it will impact me regardless.
Well, I think that real and imagined is tripping up the concept is that it's none of it's imagined, it's all real. Whether it is present and in your present world or in your future is, to me, again, that's what differentiates how I deal with it. So when I'm talking to someone that expresses a fear, that's very real. And I don't care, it doesn't really matter, it's real. But then I think, okay, is that happening right now? Like, I'm afraid of snakes. Okay, well, is there a snake here right now? No. Is there snakes in your future? Maybe, but it really dictates how I proceed.
Okay,
And
go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, I don't want to redefine your terms, but I know when I've talked to people I'm mentoring to distinguish between anxiety and fear. I mean, those are the terms I use, anxiety and fear, because in terms of our evolutionary makeup, we are always scanning the horizon. We're always scanning our environment for something that is going to harm us. And most of the time, that's just anxiety of that coyote that's not really out there. But fear is when that coyote is really there and it's fixing to attack you and the hairs on the back of your neck go up and you need to deal with that in the present. And so to distinguish between, and not that anxiety is not real to you or important to deal with, but the difference between, as Dia said, the present danger and the perceived danger.
What I don't want you guys to misunderstand, thank you for that very much, is this. Someone has an imagined fear. I could lose my savings, okay? But you've got a great job right now. You've got money in the bank. Look what happened in 2008. What's the guy's name that was the financial crook? He just died.
Bernie
Madoff. Okay. Wow. That people could have had a imagined fear. I could lose my money. Guess what? Many were destroyed financially. That was a real fear. But as you ladies had said, a fear is a fear. And if I say, don't worry about that, that's not real. What have I done in that relationship? I've shut it off. If you tell me I've got this fear, let's say it's just it's an imagined fear, but for whatever reason it's there, okay? And you tell me, Chris, that's not real. Just forget it. Move on. I may not want to talk to you more about it. What if I let me talk to you about it some and just get it out there? And maybe you can walk me through it. It could need a professional counselor. Guys, I believe many times people, and I believe in professional counselors. I've been to one, and I may go to one later on this year, dealing with my mom's, she's in hospice care right now. I've already processed that, but I do believe that many times a trusted friend, a mentor can walk someone through their fears and they can come out on the other side. So let's go back to the diagram for a moment. So what would you say, what are some ways fear has manifested itself in your life or someone else you want to share in some of these 6 areas here? Let's brainstorm for a little bit on this.
Well, physical is an easy one for me. I think about, the fight or flight or freeze response that we get when there's an impending danger, and you can all think about your heart rate gets high and your breathing rate gets fast and you have all these other physiological things happening in your body. And then over time, if there is this constant, call it maybe like a hypervigilance, right? Then that starts to manifest in, the shoulders are tight and the jaws clench and it's a headache or it's a pain in the neck or that kind of a physical manifestation of a kind of like a chronic stress that comes from chronic fear.
Yes, it's real. The doctor says to me, Chris, you need to manage your stress. I go, well, thank you. Then I go, how do I do that? Honestly, a mentor can help a person manage their stress by just talking about it. Let me interject this, and I'm going to go back to the illustration. There's something amazing that happens when I can sit down with another, I'll say another man. My marriage, yes, I have a strong marriage and I can do that with my wife. But sometimes it's very helpful for me as a man to sit down with another man, to sit down with me and process and be able to just say, hey, man, I'm battling this fear, this right here. Whether it's a real fear, like the doctor said, you've got this issue with your health, or it's an imagined, a potential fear of I could lose my job, even though there's nothing on the horizon that says that. But I am insecure in my job anyway. I'm insecure in how I would earn money for my family. There's something amazing when you can sit down with another person and just get it out and say, there it is. And you start talking about it, and that person says, that's not abnormal. By the way, I've had that fear before. I'm dealing with that fear right now. Let's talk through it. But there's also something so damaging when we hold on to those fears and someone says, hey, how are you doing, Jill? And you go, I'm fine, I'm good, but you're really not. Now, we don't tell that to just anybody, but what if you had one person in your life, a mentor, who you could trust enough to just put it out there and say, this is a fear. Could we talk about that? Could you walk me through some of that? How would you see fear manifesting itself in some of these other areas, guys? And what would be some of the consequences of it?
I can speak into the relational. I have adult children, and my daughter recently experienced a really difficult divorce, and I have fear that she's going to choose a wrong mate again. So if I'm not careful, that will really get in the way of my relationship with my adult daughter. And I'm very aware of that. So being aware that, you know what, there's a snake in the room, and that snake is my fear that she's going to choose wrong again, and it's going to happen again. And I'm fearful. But if I see that snake, I can, okay, that's my fear, and she's an adult woman. And I don't want that fear to come in between my daughter and myself.
Okay, how would it help? What could a mentor say to you as a mom who has that fear? And by the way, no one would know that unless you expressed it. Like, we couldn't have known that right now, but you had the courage to say, my daughter's going through a divorce. It's painful. Oh, what if she chooses another wrong mate? What can a mentor say to you as a mom, first of all, to help you say that and then process it?
Well, I have amazing friends that I have given permission to remind me to stay in my own lane.
Okay.
Stay in your lane, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. But again, I say that I have given permission to have other people speak into my life that they can say, it's none of your business, stay in your lane.
Okay.
And that's what helps me, because then that's right, it's not. And okay.
Isn't it it's interesting, but that's true. That's a lame way for me to say it. Isn't it interesting and scary how a fear of mine can actually damage a relationship that I care about so much? Have you guys ever had a relationship that meant so much to you, but a fear you had hindered that relationship? I mean, that's a serious thing to think about. To go, look, you're mentoring this person. I want to thank you for having the courage to be honest with me and saying you've got this fear. Now, left to itself, if it's left alone, you will damage your relationship with your husband, with your wife, your children. How many here have grown children now? I do, and I have one about ready to leave. And I can tell you as a dad, there's some fears inside of me about our 17-year-old going to graduate in a year. And I go, whoa, if I'm not careful, I will damage my relationship with her because of the fears I'm holding on to. Now, I wouldn't purposely do that. So someone else, how would you see fear manifesting itself in some of these areas?
Hi, Nikki here. Sorry, let me put my camera back on. Hiya. I suppose from my own experience, the worst thing that's ever been said to me is if I'm having a moment of doubt, or however it might be, if I'm questioning myself or my ability, if I say that I'm feeling a bit useless or a bit rubbish, the worst thing somebody can say to me is, don't be so stupid. because what they're doing then is completely taking away that feeling that's real to me at that moment. It might be imaginary, it might be real, but it's real to me at that moment. And I kind of just, I get really upset if people have sort of said, oh, don't be so stupid, because I'm having a moment of crisis or doubt or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, so sometimes I often sort of see that we have moments in life where I kind of throw all the bricks or all the toys out of my toy box. And what I really need is somebody to just sit with me to gently pack it back in again. It may not all fit, and there might be odd things I could just probably get rid of completely. But to me, it needs to go back in there in some way. And that mentor, whoever, is the one who's going to just help me give me the space in order for me to find that out for myself. Does that make sense? Have I have gone on a tangent there? But yeah, because you said there's been so much good, interesting things that have been said. There's been a lot to process.
I think the reason we bring up this tool is it's so important for a mentor to realize, if you're working with somebody, and let's say like in their job, they don't want to, there's a lack of drive, or they don't want to take on more responsibility when clearly they have the education or the experience. As a mentor, you could go, wait a minute, I wonder if there's a fear here, like a fear of success, or a fear of, oh gosh, if I am promoted to this job, then people are going to ask me to help solve problems and I may not have all the answers, or whatever it is. That's just an example with a professional fear. But as mentors, realizing to ask those questions once you've built up relation, with someone, wait, why is there a fear attached to this? Or in this relationship, you've spoken about your mom in the past, for example. Are you projecting some of that onto this relationship? Just as a mentor, having a tool to recognize, oh, wow, I wonder if there's some fear here. Just asking a simple question can open up so much for your mentee. It validates them. Maybe they've not even considered, oh my gosh, I do have this fear that I'm projecting on this relationship. That's why we introduced this tool.
Christina, how are we on time?
You've got about 5-ish minutes.
Okay. Let me throw a few things, a few questions, and you guys could, and I'll send these to you as well, but you can help develop some of these. How to help people recognize and define their fears. First of all, is it Nikki in UK? Is that right? Nikki, when you said the last thing I need someone to say, but that's stupid. Just when I get really, I'm not an arrogant person, but if I'm not careful, my wife can say she has this fear, and I think, oh, that's no big deal. I have a fear of heights, and my family knows how deep it is. No pun intended. It is a deep fear of mine, and so I can be so confident in so many areas, but put me on the ledge of something, even if there's a rail. And I'm like this little baby going, whoa. And if someone else gets close to my family, they'll do this sometimes. Well, we were taking photographs of this one area, and there's a pretty good drop off. And there's a rail, but they're all leaning against it. Hey, Dad, look. Hey, Chris, look. And inside, I'm cringing. That fear was so real. Just when I get too, or overlook someone else's fear, I'll say, wait a minute. So what's your fear, Chris? Fear of heights totally turned me inside out. And someone say, Chris, you're not even near the ledge. I know, but it still bothers me. So some questions we could ask, we throw out here. What is evidence of fear in my life? Any thoughts on that? What's some evidence that there's fear going on in my life? If you've got fear going on in your life, how would someone know that knows you? Anybody want to share on that one? And you don't have to. When are you more likely to fall to fear? When are you more likely to be more influenced by fear? I know when I'm tired and I'm weary, discouraged. Again, as a mentor, you're wanting to find these things out in a mentoring relationship. And over time, you get to know this person. And you could at some point go, you know what? I've learned with Chris, when he battles fear, fear has more control in his life whenever he's tired, or he's run too much, and he's physically and mentally tired. I know that he's more susceptible to fear. Again, guys, it's such a privilege when you can sit down with someone and express an honest fear with them, and shame and guilt are not there, but acceptance and understanding, and you start walking through that fear with them. Because at some point as a mentor, you actually want that person to be free of that fear. It doesn't mean it won't come back at them again, but it doesn't have to control them. So any other thoughts before we close on this part, guys? Christina?
Hey, Chris, I was just going to say, I think we can just go in and assume that everybody has fears, right? So it's kind of like if we're getting to know somebody and we're dealing with them, if we're going to be mentoring them, or we're starting a relationship with them, we just kind of already have that assumption. You know what? I may not know what they are. I might have a few hunches, but they have their fears, and that's going to be one of the things that I want to try to help bring out and let them know it's a safe place to process. So I think you've said all that, but I think it is just, instead of us thinking, well, there might be a time in here where I look for a fear, I think we just start there knowing there's a fear in there somewhere.
A great point, Matt. Well, you've helped me realize I've got a fear now, Matt. Thank you very much. Now, can you help me with that? No, it's true. That's just how it is. Scripture talks about fear again and again and again. So wouldn't it be wonderful if one of us, two of us, three of us as mentors get the topic on the table so people can be free of those things?
Yeah, so we put fear under the why mentor, just like Matt said, because every person deals with fear. And what we have seen is traditionally, if there's problems that somebody's having spiritually, emotionally, relationally, if you chase it long enough, there's usually a root fear that's pretty much at the core of it. And so coming alongside one another in a mentoring relationship can really help. If you target those fears, then that's can really help the person live abundant life, live quality of life. On the top of your page 10, we talk about mentoring in safe and dangerous places. There's two quotes. Well, one is just something that Chris said, but we put it in the thing. But there's another book that we'd like to reference. It's called The Cure. It's an excellent, easy to read, small book. You can order it off Amazon. It is a great tool for mentoring, for insight into people, but he makes a comment in there. What if there was a place so safe that the worst of you could be known, and you would discover that you would not be loved less, but more in the telling of it? Let me read it again. What if there was a place so safe that the worst of you could be known, and you would discover that you would not be loved less, but more in the telling of it? And that quote we've used for years now really sums up the kind of mentoring relationship we talk about. A lot of times fear will drive somebody to say, wow, if I disclose this fear to this person, they're going to reject me, or they're going to look at me very differently. But mentoring creates that place where there may be a fear on my part to tell somebody, oh, I'm dealing with this fear. And when they look at me and go, okay, let's deal with that. Oh my gosh, that's an incredible place. And what a gift to offer to someone else. interject a personal story here. So those of you involved in the call last week, when I was 35, I had our third daughter. I experienced horrible, paralyzing, crippling anxiety for about 6 weeks. And there was a fear that was attached to that anxiety. And the fear was that I was going to end up like with a mental illness. There was mental illness in my family. And I was really afraid that that was going to be my fate. So a mentor in my life, a woman who was older than me, she kept, this is going to be okay. This is going to be okay. What can I do to help you? And once I finally verbalized to her, I am afraid this anxiety, it was hormonally related. I just had a baby, but I couldn't get past the fact that I was starting this journey toward mental illness. I really thought I was cracking up. And once I vocalized that to her, she helped me walk that through. I was still dealing with anxiety, but man, that safe place to say that to her and process and unpack those thoughts was so freeing. And so a lot of times, that's where we find out with mentoring, if we can provide such a safe place that dangerous conversations can be had, things that maybe have never been muttered before, that's really what we believe mentoring at its core has the power to do. Chris, anything else you want to interject there?
Let me address that question. So guys, that question, where do you find that? What if there was a place so safe that the worst of you could be known? You would discover that you would not be loved less, but more in the telling of it. Where do you find that? Where do you find that? Do you find that with God? What do you think? I first thought that was God when I first read that. In fact, I thought it for a while. And then I looked at it again and I thought, it can't be God. Anybody know why? There's a word or two in there that disqualifies God as the answer there.
Because he already knows. My telling it doesn't change his knowledge
of
me.
Okay. I hadn't thought about that. So someone else can add to that. What's something that's said in that question that disqualifies the answer being God? Because we're talking about an incredible relationship here to be given.
Well, God's not a place, he's a person.
Okay.
That's what sticks out to me.
Okay. I guess in that, I would say, well, there's that relationship, there's that place where two people come together. But what it was for me is this, guys, you cannot be loved more by God. He loves you, period. But that's not true with humans. I can choose to love you a little bit, maybe more, maybe less, depending on what you say and do and how you make me feel. So the idea is this, that question, that I could be that for someone else. No matter what they say or do, I could make the decision ahead of time to walk with them and to love them even in the middle of the stuff. Now that's tough, I'll tell you. But what a privilege for me to be that for someone else. Go ahead, Christina.
Okay, take some time right now to look at an interview with a young couple who both had the privilege of having mentors in their life. I think it's on page 17. It's supplement 1. It says mentoring Q&A. It's on page 17 of your documents. Lucas and Maria, they're a young couple who live in Vienna, Austria, and they are mentors themselves. And they work with international students. We had the privilege of spending several years and working together with them, but we did an interview with them. And would somebody want to do the Q? One person read the question, another person read the answer. Alrighty then, I will do both. So the question, to Lucas and Maria, what has mentoring meant for you? Their response said, godly guidance with great trust and discipleship. When I say discipleship, I mean going along with another in life. It is much more than leading someone to Christ. A mentor is one who is at least one step ahead with life experience and makes God's word practical in everyday life. It's one thing to just give a scripture to a mentee, but the mentor brings their heart and the word and puts it into context in your life. Transparency from a mentor encourages me by them being real and choosing to be vulnerable themselves. Love and trust is key because I know that she loves me and I trust her. I know that my mentor wants the very best for me. And mentoring, sometimes you act like a mirror. You help people see things they are not seeing. You offer a new perspective. We are all created to be in God's image. A good mentor shows you a little bit of what God is like. When there is something ugly in your life and the mentor says with you that God is showing his unconditional love through the love of the mentor, it's showing someone what God looks like. This is Christ in us, and if we rely on our own strength, we will not achieve anything. This was translated from German, so as I'm reading this, I'm going, some of this is awkward. That's why it was translated. And the other question, so you both are being mentored, but for some time now, you have been mentoring others as well. Why are you choosing to mentor others? Their answer, I know God puts these people in my life. He gives me love for them. It's not just something I've decided to do, but it's a call God has given to all of his children. We believe it is the most effective tool of God to work miracles in the lives of others. Also, as a mentee, you don't realize what you are receiving while you are being mentored until you mentor someone else. Final question, what do you see God doing in and through, or God doing with you both through mentoring? Through mentoring, I can see that I can reach non-believing people with the gospel by letting them have an insight into my life and how God works in my life. I also see how my testimony and experiences can help other Christians heal. And then they end with a quote. So based on what we just read, were there some parts that stood out to you in some of their answers to the questions? Give you time to rescan that again, and was there something that stood out for you?
I think you see a little bit of this multifaceted element. You know, it's you don't define it in a short phrase because it is so many things. But you know, you see the walking with, you see the vulnerability, you see spending time together, sharing perspective, you know, sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly, and knowing that, you know, that's a safe place to do that. But you know, you can also see, you can just sort of imagine, right, the intentionality of the time that the person who would answer in this way has spent with a mentor.
I think one of the ways that it's powerful is sometimes in discipleship and things like that, we can kind of come with the curriculum, right? We can come with, you know, here's where we're starting and here's where we're going. And a mentor is kind of like the curriculum is the relationship, and so you meet them where they're at. You know, you kind of figure out where are they. Okay, that's where we'll start, and then you process that, and then you find out, okay, now where are you? Okay, let's start there, and we'll process that, right? So it's you can help introduce new things into their life, but it becomes you meet them where they're at and ready to receive that, and that can be different than sometimes discipleship is more of a, you know, okay, sit down, I've got the curriculum, and, you know, get ready to learn kind of thing.
Any other observations somebody saw or wanted to point out?
I think in the first paragraph for their first answer, they say it is much, or excuse me, a mentor is one who is at least one step ahead with life experiences and makes God's word practical in everyday life. One of the things I say to all of our disciplers who, most of the people who I ask or who are asked by our teams to be disciplers, I don't know how to disciple. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to lead others, that kind of stuff. And I always say to them, I'm like, age does not necessitate maturity. So just allow God to use where you've been and who you are in order to lead. And if you're willing, he'll do the rest.
Mm-hmm. That's good, Dane. What's interesting about this too is because we know them personally, they work with international students. They are very intentional about mentoring people who don't share the same values, perhaps, don't understand maybe a relationship with God, because they're working with students from all over internationally. It's beautiful to see their house is their classroom and having people around their table. Yeah, they don't change who they are. They'll pray before a meal. They'll talk about their struggles. They pour into people, and people are very aware of their Christian faith. But we've seen people that they've had direct contact with in mentoring relationships come to know the Lord, and through them they live such a great example of mentoring has the power to transform lives through Christ. They see that unconditional love in action. They see their consistency, and it's just a powerful thing to watch them. And from what they've been given, now they give it away. And that's what we say. We want to cast this vision for mentoring. It's yes, you give your life away to someone, but in that giving away, you share the importance of giving their life away. You know, it's what Jesus did to the 12, and how this huge movement of Christianity began, is just passing it on. So again, we know them. It's been beautiful to see their lives. And just one quick backstory, their parents both became Christians due to missionaries who had come to their country and pouring into each one of their parents. She and her sister were raised in a Christian home because of the influence of somebody pouring into her mother. And yeah, again, mentoring transforms lives. Chris, anything else you want to say there on that?
Well, because we are speaking of Lucas and Maria, Christina, I think it could be beneficial for you to share with them the connection God gave you and why you were able to mentor her so deeply, where she became like a daughter because of some similarities.
I think we shared in the first session, you know, the importance of having a good connection with somebody. She was in our illustration that we shared last session about we were attending an Austrian church. Because we were Americans, she came up to us and wanted to know if we'd open up our home for international student ministries, just in being intentional and trying to find out, okay, who is this young woman? She had lost her mom at the age of 20. And because I'd lost my mom at 27, that was our instant connector. So as we, would go out for coffee and talk about the international ministry, and I'd always say, so tell me again, did your mom have cancer? You know, that was our connecting point. And then the relationship just grew after 5 or 6 years of that, me being intentional, but her being willing to participate in this relationship, right? And dealing with some of those fears, being transparent. It just illustrates it's not where traditional discipleship maybe brings a curriculum to the table once a week or once a month. Mentorship, of what Fahrenheit talks about, is this coming alongside another person, walking the journey with them. And now all these years later, she and I are still in contact are in contact with one another, just because of one little connecting point that was followed up, that was followed up, that was followed up.
Let me speak, go back to the one-on-one. So we believe mentoring is a one-on-one relationship. But let me clarify. We believe in small groups, life groups, gatherings of men, gatherings of women. But we also believe that there's something unique that happens between two people. And since we were talked about fear earlier, let me throw this question out to you guys. How likely are you to share a fear that maybe no one else knows you have in a small group, even if you know everyone pretty well, as opposed to a trusted one-on-one you would have with someone else? Thoughts on that? And would you share it as freely? If not, why? What's missing, or what would be added as opposed to the small group to one-on-one?
Well, I think I demonstrated already my willingness to just put it all out there for a small group that I don't know. And my boss too. So, I mean, I think that for me, it's more about who I am and my inner character, but not everybody can just say things in a group. Obviously, that's why Christine has had some trouble getting people to speak, right? Because not all of us are comfortable. So, I mean, I think it's unique to a person, but I don't think there's a better or a worse situation.
Okay. Someone else? Okay, let's take Dion for a minute. Okay, what's something Dion shared earlier that if you were a mentor in her life that you could go, you know what, I want to talk about that and get to know her better and find out what's going on there, how I can support and encourage and challenge maybe. What is something she said earlier that stuck out to you we could do that with? We'll see how well people were listening.
She was afraid that she might die.
Okay. Who says that? I mean, don't we all think it sometimes? But to be able to just say it basically in a bunch of in front of strangers, that takes courage. So Dion, what I can already see with you, it seems easy for you to put it out there to open the door for people to be vulnerable with you. Would you say that's true?
I would say that it's a learned skill and that it's scary every time, but the more you do it, the more you understand that your imagined fear that something bad's going to happen isn't real.
Right.
You can put it out there, you know?
Okay, she also said something else, another serious matter. What else did she say? That you could, as a mentor, to go, you know what, man, I want to go there. I want to talk about that.
She talked about messing up her relationship with her adult daughter.
Wow. Afraid of dying, afraid of messing up the relationship with the adult daughter. Two incredibly important aspects of a person's life. Could you guys see where, some people do this, what do we talk about as a mentor? Man, what is there to talk about? It could be awkward, be a lot of silence. Well, you need to, you want to do a little bit of homework in the beginning, but can you see how long could you guys talk about those two topics Dion brought up today? If you're mentoring this person, how long could you talk on those topics?
Well, as someone that has adult children, I can relate to that, especially the time my son called me up and he said, if you still support Trump after this, I'm going to disown you as my father. And I'm like, he's not even president. It's a moot issue. Move on and get your face out of Facebook. So.
My point in asking that, John, is that there's so much to talk about. And when you can get people to talk about the things that are on their hearts, not just surface talk is necessary to a certain point, but you don't need a mentor if all you're going to do is be surface, right? That's what the world does. A mentor has the courage, and it can be scary sometimes, to go below the surface and talk about fears. And so, Deanna, thank you for that. So being afraid of dying of COVID, because you had COVID, correct? Okay. Then, wow, my daughter's going through a painful divorce. I'm a dad to 3 daughters. I go, how would I handle that? So I can tell you, as a mentor, and I'm a qualified mentor, but that humbles me to go, how would I speak into that?
The next session, we're going to go into some specifics of how do you mentor. So we've spent a lot of time talking today about the Sphere tool and conversations, and obviously talking and having those conversations is a huge part of mentoring. But just like we read about Lucas and Maria, sometimes it's you know, my stage of life. If I'm mentoring somebody younger than me, I've got to do errands, and I'm going to bring that person along with me as we do errands. And we may not even talk about the Bible or something deep, you know, some spiritual fear or whatever, but she sees me interacting with my teenager and interacting with the Walmart clerk or whatever. That's all part of mentoring. Next time, we're going to talk about a specific tool that you can use. But I think it's important to make that point that when we're giving a clear picture of mentoring, and again, this is 3 sessions of a workshop that we can't teach you every single thing, but it's about having authentic conversations. It's about getting to those deep fears, to discovering who a person is, helping them discover their own potential. But it's also part of it, that overlapping, you know, that Venn diagram. It's just showing up and doing life. It's bringing a hot meal when their kids are driving them crazy and you just need to go serve them. That's all a part of it. So next time we'll work on session 3. We will go over a tool together called My Life Tool. And we will say this over and over and over, but this particular tool is not a, hey, let's sit down next Saturday and take 2 hours to go over this tool. This is something ongoing that you can use as a jumping off point with your mentor. In the few minutes here that we have left, was there any question either about the things that we talked about, something that's come up that maybe somebody said that triggered another thought? And we'll have just a short time here of Q&A.
I wanted to just speak into Maria and Lucas's comments, the one that where one of them, whoever says, we are all created to be in God's image. And a good mentor shows you a little bit of what God is like. And what I know to be true about people who have mentored me is that when they point out God in me, not just have me seeing them, but God, but when my mentor will point out, well, Dee, you know, that fear of your not, you know, daughter choosing poorly again, that's possibly coming out of your care and compassion, which God created you to be, caring and compassionate. So she will switch it around, instead of it being like, what a loser, you're so fearful, what's wrong with you, that's not happening, or whatever, like Nikki said, right? and she turns it around and says, but you know what, that's just your care and compassion on overdrive. Keep it in its bounds and enjoy that kind of caring and compassionate part of yourself that is God. And then all of a sudden I'm a whole person again, and I realize, oh yeah, wait a minute. So you know, we're all image bearers, whether we're Christians or not, and we can all have, if we can see the God in other people, we can point that out to them, and that is a healing that we couldn't do without God. And it doesn't matter if they're Christian or not, because they are created in God's image.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah. Reframing. Yeah. Reframing what somebody, how they see it. That's good. Thoughts, questions, observations, and anything so far? Okay, Chris, you want to close us?
Yes, I did have this thought, and on the aspect of fear. fear actually distorts my identity. Excuse me, Sam, let you take it while I get a cough drop.
Well, I don't know what I'm taking because that is off script, so.
Yeah, I'll say something, Christina. My experience is that this is like so needed. It's like, you know, there's a need for mentors all over the place. And I think what we're seeing here is not just, hey, we're going to create a few people because there's a few people out there that have this unique need or something. But this is just something that is like, how do we get people to be impacted by the love of God in a personal way, right? And so just the overall need of this is just infinite. It's gigantic, and we can't have enough people doing this.
That's so true. And I'd like to tell you that, you know, we have all these great partnerships with churches that are just like, yes, teach us these things, help us equip. And that's just not true. However, the church that we've been attending, we have officially formed a partnership because the leadership, the pastor has seen that very thing. He's seen the power of one-on-one, and we're super excited. We hope that this will, we belong to a community of churches that started in Waco, Texas. There's several in the United States, and then tons of church plants overseas that our pastor's hoping this will be a model that we can, it's nothing new, right? That's what Jesus told the 12. But we have so forgotten that power of mentoring, sharing God's love can transform communities. And it's not unique to just Norman or Austin or wherever. So we're really excited to see what God's going to do there.
I'll try to speak unless the allergies get me again, guys. But as we were closing, if I were to tell you, or I were to ask you, let's throw out some words that you've gained so far. It wouldn't have to be the exact words, but let's define with some individual words mentoring so far. Just throw anything out there that comes to mind.
Relationship.
Okay.
Intention.
Dane, I'm sorry, Dane, what if I say project? What do you say to that?
Sorry, say that again.
What if I say, you said relationship, and I agree. What if I say project? What do you say to that?
No.
Project, meaning the mentorship is a project?
Yeah.
For people as projects, I think, Chris, is what you're trying to allude to, right?
Matt?
I think it's a task. I think it's a task. I think it's a task. I think you have to be prepared. And, you know, if Richard were here today, he would tell you that there were many days that in me mentoring him, I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared, and it flopped flat in my face. And he wasn't a higher notched project on my list of getting prepared and being prepared to do. And it flopped miserably, and he called me out on it, which is awesome. I love him for that. But yeah, I don't take offense to too many things. You know, you could call me stupid and I'd be like, yeah, you're probably right, you know. But so saying the word project, that doesn't bother me. I know that some people might say, I'm not a project, and get all offended. But I think the task of doing mentorship is definitely something you have to work at and prepare for. So,
okay, that's a great point. When I say project, to me, I was leaning in a negative way. A guy told me one time, we just began the mentoring relationship, and I said something and this was not my intention at all, because I don't see people as projects. But I said something, and obviously he had some experience, a negative experience in the past. He looked at me very seriously and said, Chris, please never treat me like a project. And I was sick in my soul that he would even think that. I thought, wow. So I stopped. I said, please forgive me. What I said, that was not my intention. I'm just trying to clarify, but I made him feel like a project, or gave him the idea that maybe he would be a project like with the last guy. Okay.
So let's go back to, I heard several people speak at the same time. What were some other words that you like?
Coming alongside.
Coming alongside.
Walking with.
Walking with. Good. Nikki,
Intentional.
with the British accent when you say that.
Did someone say intentional? In a humorous way, let me interject this. Christina, when I say Christina, if you'll take it from here, I need to get a cough drop. And you, what did you say?
It's not scripted.
Oh, this is off script. And I know what you mean by that. We have a plan because we need to honor your time and make sure we cover material. But obviously, you don't want that that element to be a part of your atmosphere, right? With a mentee. Oh, I'm sorry, Matt. That's off the schedule here. Can't. But Chris, I really didn't talk about that fear. Well, that's next week, Matt. We'll get to that. Okay, that's plastic. We don't want that. I want to go in with a plan. Dane, as you said earlier, it's a task to a point. I want to be prepared. But Matt, if you say, hey, Chris, by the way, man, I've got this fear. I want to talk to you about that. Did I put whatever I had aside for that moment and go, okay, Matt, talk to me? That will make you feel validated and known and heard.
Just some housekeeping for next time. Between now and next time, once the recording, it takes a while to download and load. I'll send the recording out through the Eventbrite link, and then I will include the article that I read earlier. The two references in the back of your PDF guide, there's resources, and the Cure book is listed there, and the Power of 101 or One-on-One. I believe all of those you can get through Amazon or whatever book source that you find. And Jill, I think you had mentioned the languishing article. If you'd send that to me, I can send that out too. Any resources that we'd want to share. And then next week, we'll learn a specific tool. And I'll talk with Chris. We may send you out a few teasers to think about prior to working through. We'll work through the tool as a group together. And if you think of a thought, observation, another resource, we like to think ourselves we're connectors, we're resource givers. And so we'd love to share whatever resources that you guys have. Next week, when we finish too, we want to throw out the opportunity for you guys to be part of a larger think tank. We have mentors, people in the field, learning from people who've been doing it years and years and years to this is something new for them, where we gather, we've been doing it once a quarter to like Dee said, hey, you know what my mentor does? She reframes my whatever, just to gain some tools and be a part of a larger network of what it looks like in the trenches, so to speak, of mentoring. And so we'll give you that information next week. So I think that we're done. I'll get all that out to you. Feel free to shoot an email. I think it comes to mind if you have the information on Eventbrite, it comes to me. So. And
I don't know if this has been mentioned last week or not, but our organization, we put out a newsletter once a week, and it's about 2 paragraphs. It's a thought on mentoring, something that's happening, or talking about a tool, or just some snippets of mentoring. So if you want to be on that list to get that each week, just send Christina an email, said, please put me on there, and John will send that to you each week. And I'm going to throw this out. Next week, we're going to show a clip of a movie that came out this last year. Has anyone seen Mr. Rogers? Now, if you grew up in the US at a certain age, you probably know who Mr. Rogers was. He had a children's program. So they came out with a movie last year called It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Anyone see that? I think it's an excellent movie. I think I've seen it 2 or 3 times. Guys, I would encourage you, if you're able to watch it again or watch it for the first time, watch that movie between now and next week and look for aspects of mentoring, qualities, details, aspects of mentoring that you believe are in that movie. I think it's an excellent example of authentic relationships about a man being deliberate, being so intentional in the lives of people. So if you have a chance, it's worth watching. Okay, Christina, anything else? We would love to connect with you guys, as Christina said, outside this as well. And so don't be timid. Shoot us email if you have a question, you want to know more about us or anything else. We'd love to hear from you, okay?
I have a question. Martin, where are you in the Czech?
Straight in Prague.
Okay, okay. One of my favorite places in the world is Svitavy.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Spent a lot of time there.
Okay. And where are you now located?
In Colorado.
In Colorado. Oh, that
Yeah.
is my hard place as well. So it's good.
We need to switch places. Come see each
Yeah,
other.
yeah. Yeah, that would be very nice. I would
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Dane, thanks for asking. Guys, just what happened just then, that's part of what we want to build, a network, a team where Dane can go, I know this guy in the Czech Republic and he knows me. I'm going to visit his home, or we're going to work together and we want to be stronger mentors and help each other impact the people in our areas of influence. I love this. Martin, I don't know you yet, but we have a common friend in the Czech Republic that I knew in Vienna. And
That's
the friend
right.
in Vienna got the email about the workshop and told Martin about it. So there's all kinds of potential paths to cross. And Nikki, I want you to meet our friend in London, or she's not in London per se, but close. So a lot of potential, guys. So it's mentoring, but it's also developing these kind of relationships across the world.
Martin, in Vienna, it's customary that if I invite you for a coffee, then I'm paying for everything. So you need to ask Dane to invite you to Colorado. Everything.
My wife has already got it paid for. That's who she is. So come on over.
Thank you.
You're invited, Martin.
Y'all are invited.
I have a wife and 2 kids, so we would love to come, but I know what that takes. So we also host people quite a lot. So no, thank you. That's great.
Well, we send teams to Africa all the time. So I'm in and out of Europe pretty much on a normal year. Let's put it that way. I'm pretty much in and out of Europe about 8 times. So
all right.
yeah.
Let's if Prague is on the list, please, like, we can be connected through Chris or Christina, and no problem.
Yeah, that'd be
awesome.
fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah,
I'd love to send an email and get connected that way. So I could do that with pretty much everybody on here because that's who I am. But I have thousands of questions about Texas because my wife would love to move to Texas, but I'm like pulling the reins as hard as I possibly can because I know once that door opens, I can say goodbye to my friends and family here in Colorado. So, but she's tired of the cold. So
Dane, it sounds like you may have some fear in there. We can discuss that later.
excuse me, very little fear. Just I'm an adventurer. So as soon as that door opens up, then I want to go and I want to check out Mississippi and I want to go check out where my nephew lives in South Carolina. And yeah, so it's so we do tent ministry where we don't raise 100% of our funds. We also set up businesses and help our staff set up businesses to run and stuff, because I'm an entrepreneur basically is why that is. But we set up wedding venues. And so we've been to probably 12 down in Texas with a lot of our students who have gone with us have gotten married at these places. And so we're really good friends with a lot of the people who have started these wedding venues. And yeah, it's a little busy in Texas for the wedding venue business. And that's just kind of where my heart is because I love weddings and celebrations.
Well, now you tell us, our daughter's getting married in November and they just settled on a wedding venue. Helped us out, Dane.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, we've started one in Oregon and now we're starting one here on our farm here in Colorado. So hopefully that'll be up and going this year, but we'll see. So
well, if you move to Texas, be afraid of housing prices.
Oh, yeah.
right now.
Why? What are they?
Central Texas is just crazy right now.
Is it
Yeah,
because of the influx of people from California and other areas?
Partly.
Yeah. Probably
Yeah.
people from Colorado who have had all the Californians come to Colorado because
Mhm.
a $340,000 house. Well, let me say this. Next door, we wanted to buy 4.2 acres, and it was listed about 3 years ago at $22,000 an acre. She just sold it for $90,000 an acre. Yeah.
Wow.
So we wanted it. We wanted to buy it and build a house and then be right next to our wedding venue. And
That's
yeah.
kind of what's happening here.
Mhm.
Well, come to Oklahoma. It's cheap. Nobody wants to live here.
But it's
Longhorn.
Oklahoma.
I'm a Longhorn and I'm totally afraid to go to Oklahoma. So no.
Well, especially not Norman. Yeah, you wouldn't.
Beyond,
No.
beyond, that's a legitimate fear. That's not
Yes,
American.
it's legitimate. Yes.
Yeah, that comes at a price, right?
Yeah. And we live right down from the campus, close to it. So
Well, I'm not.
I will say, okay, Matt, in your Texas group, I shared with Matt, Christine and I led a retreat for a group of people in what's the name of the town, Christina? Brady, Texas, last September. And we become friends that Dane now knows long distance. And Phil Chavon and his wife have a ranch wedding meeting adventure venue. And so who knows, maybe we'll be able to come and meet you Texas crew down there for a 2 or 3 day event. Wouldn't that be great?
That would be fantastic. Brady is not far from here.
That's what I understand. So
Tamiki and Martin, if you're not familiar, we live in Norman, Oklahoma, which the University of Oklahoma is here. And in Texas, the football teams, the university football teams are big rivals. When we moved to Norman years ago and our girls were little, I'm not a football fan. I didn't understand the whole phenomena, but in Norman, the Texas Longhorns sign, people do this, or I don't know what. Well, in Norman, we don't
they put it upside down.
Put it upside down, and I thought that was I didn't understand that was wrong. That's like derogatory. It's not like I'm flipping somebody off, but that's just.
Oh yes, it is. Oh yes, it is.
I didn't understand. I was like, wait, that's not the sign for Texas. Like, no, it's whatever it is. And on that cheery note, we're gonna leave.
We just took a screenshot of that, Christina. I'm going to be floating that around here.
That'll be my new Facebook profile page. Thank you.
Well, I will say, let's see. So John.
Chris, no more words. It's time to leave.
Okay, we have 2 minutes. Okay, this is off script, right? By the way, I'm more off script personality. My wife is more scripted. Together, we make a good team. But so John moved on his own to New Mexico. Was it 2 years ago, John?
I finally got here last March.
Last March, okay.
Yeah.
But we're all in different places, but I want to speak. John's in New Mexico and went there to start a new life, right?
Yeah, God called me this direction to start my ministry. So
yeah, that takes courage to do these new things. So anyway, I love what's happening at the end here, guys. This is part of what we desire to do with Fahrenheit Real Life Mentoring is connect people. Okay, it's not just about the training of mentoring, but it's what happens among the different mentors. So anyway, you guys got me excited today to be connecting like this. So if you get a chance, watch that movie between now and next week. And there we go. Any other thoughts? All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for brightening my week.
During the week.
Yeah.
Thanks
thank
for
you so
brightening
much.
my week, everybody.
Okay.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you.